My name's Oliver Carney. I've been with JNC for over 4 years. And we're just going to deal with some of the job costing. So I'm just going to introduce JNC, demonstrate the software. You can ask the questions as some of you have already seen. You can ask those, and as they come up, I'll try and answer them as they come up. But if not, I'll try and answer them at the end, and I'll leave about 5 minutes time for that as well. So as I said, we've got a small selection of our customers there, so a wide range of sectors within the construction and maintenance industries. And as I said, we've been a developer for, we've been a Sage developer for over 20 years, and we're also a business partner as well, so we get the Sage development releases when they make any updates to Sage50 or Sage Payroll, and we're used by about 500 customers. As I mentioned before, we're just dealing with the contract management. I'm going to show you how it integrates with Sage, deal with the subcontractor verifications, allocating timesheets and costing those, whether you're using cost codes or budgets. I'm also going to show you all the retention reports for both sales and subcontractors as well. So you get the full job costing benefits, and you can get rid of any Excel documents that you may be using. And as I mentioned, we've got a maintenance manager suite. So this can be a one-stop shop for all your construction and maintenance jobs. And as I said, full cradle to grave. So from quoting all the way through to invoicing, we've got a system that within about 6 months, so September 2019, will be a full cloud-based suite. So I'll be using Google Chrome, but you could use Safari or Microsoft Edge, any internet browser. And as some of you have found, you can type in your questions there. Like I said, I'll try and answer those as we go through, but if not, I'll try and answer them at the end and leave about 5 minutes to answer those questions. So with no further ado, going to begin the demonstration for Construction Manager. So if I can close that. And here is Construction Manager. So as I mentioned, it's been designed as a bolt-on to Sage Accounts and also Sage Payroll. So initially we've got to look very similar to Sage, and as soon as you click on your customers, you'll have your customer list in Sage, and if you click on New, as you would in Sage, you'd have your put in the account code, customer details, click Save, and that will then create the customer in Sage Accounts as well. So ideally, all the information gets entered into Construction Manager, and then if you've got the relevant access, that can then post, in this case, the customer details into Sage. Principles are the same with the suppliers as well. So yet again, all we do is click on New, and then fill in the account details, so account code, supplier details, click Save, and yet again, that's the supplier both in Construction Manager and in Sage Accounts. And we also link up to HMRC's website as well. So if we just click on the online verification, we can put in the UTR and either the NI or company reg, depending on how they're set up. Click on the verify and match. And then most of the time, it's either going to be a sole trader or a company. Click on the declaration, save and submit. And then if all the details match, that will then populate the verification number. And then the tax treatment, so whether it's net, grossed or unmatched, unmatched being 30%. And also we do have a none, so if they're not part of the CIS scheme, you can still track them as a subcontractor and use all the functionality of that, but they won't appear on your CIS return. We've also got an insurance tab as well. So here I've just got some public or employer's liability, and basically we can track the expiry date so that when we go on to our subcontractor module, we then have a list of all our subbies, and you can see some are in red and some are in black. The red ones have had their insurance expired. We can take it a step further by stopping anyone from allocating a transaction if their insurance has expired. Next, we've got the contract list. So here we've got our jobs. We do have an automated job numbering system. So whether you've got 5 or 15 people accessing the system, it will just allocate the next number available. But just for the meantime, we'll look at the Pritchard's Roads flat job, so just above the thick blue line. And in here, we've then got our job number or job code. We've got our customer, so this picks up from the Sage customer list, and all I need to do is say type in all, and that will bring up all pipe engineering, but also Mr. and Mrs. Hall as well. So it will search on any part of its name. We've got the start date, and then we've got classification. So this is a way of grouping different parts of the business. These are all customizable, so you can have your own unique ones. But when we come onto the job reporting, we can then look at different parts of the business, i.e. commercial or residential, and see how different areas of the business are performing. Next, we've got the value of the job. We can also keep a track of any day works or any variations, and then that gives us our total value. And then finally here we've got the name of the job, i.e. how the guys on site are going to refer to it. On the right hand side we've got the status, so by default it's active, but the ones I want to mention are the complete with postings and complete no postings. The no postings will stop anyone from allocating a transaction to the job, i.e. job's done, retention's been released, it's dead. Complete with postings can be used when there's retention still to be released and 1 or 2 invoices to go in or come out. We've got the order number, so this is the customer's order number to you, and that can appear on any invoice or sales application. And then we've got 2 dates. We've got a to be completed by, which is just an estimate of when the job should be finished, and the date completed, this is going to trigger any retentions. So by default, we've got a 5% retention, a 2% discount, and a 12-month retention period. So in 12 months' time, from this date, I'll show you that that retention is due to be released, and I'll show you that later on. And then we've also got a project manager, so this links to our labour list where we can allocate a project manager or QS depending on your terminology. And then on here we've got a job analysis. I've just manually entered in some contracts managers, but it's similar to the classification, and it's just an extra way that you can group that job analysis. So you can break that job down even further. We've got a site address, so if you're raising any purchase orders, you can just click on new and then fill in the site address details. And then as I mentioned at the beginning, we've got something that's called tender code. So within Construction Manager, there's by default 3 ways that we can cost the job. The first one will simply split out labour, material and subcontractor costs. The second one is what's called cost codes. So they're any code that you want to track the cost of, i.e. labour, material, subcontract labour, subcontract material, plant hire, overheads, delivery charges, etc. On the screen at the moment, we've got what's called tender codes. So on here, this one's been set up as a house builder, but this structure will be created specifically for your needs. So depending on how you want to budget for your jobs or record those costs, you can set up that structure here. So on here I've got the site prep and the demolition, and I've just allocated some material, labour, plant and subcontractor costs. And then against those I can allocate a budget, and it can notify me if I go over my budget. And I can also do a cost versus budget report, which I will show you later on as well. And to set those up, all we do is just go into the templates, and then in here I've set up a simple one where I've just got half a dozen codes tracking labour, materials, etc. So next we're just going to go into the job management. This filter, you'll see this little pop-up window appear throughout the program. In this instance, it's just filtering by a date range, but depending on what screen you're in, you can filter by customer, employee, subcontractor, supplier, project manager, and you can filter all the information within the system. So on here, if we look at just above the thick blue line, we've got the job number, the name of the job and the customer. We've then got the contract value, and then we come on to the sales. So we've got the gross application less any discounts, which gives us our net application and what's been invoiced. We've also then got what's outstanding, which includes retention, and then we've got the sales retention figure here as well. Next, we've got our purchase invoices. So we've got our 39,000. our PAYE labour, our stock, our subcontractor worksheets, subcontractor materials, and any subby labour, and also any retention that we're holding on our subcontractors, which then gives us our total cost and then our gross profit. And then finally, just want to mention we've got the outstanding orders, so purchase orders raised but not invoiced. And then anything within our system, we can track the activity for that job. So on here, we've got our 39,000 for our purchases. We can go to the purchase tab, and that will then populate all the purchase invoices that have been allocated to that job. And as you can see, you can go into any part of the program and see how those costs have been allocated. So next, I'm going to go into the subcontractors. So I'm just going to close everything down there and start afresh. So in our subcontractors, as I mentioned, we've got these verified and linked them up to HMRC. During this presentation, I'm just going to deal with the worksheets and certificates, but we do have a purchase ordering system as well. So if you wanted to raise a purchase order, we also do have an application system as well if you want to process your subcontractors through that. But in here, if you're dealing with sort of labour only guys, we can use the worksheet. And the benefit for this is that we can allocate multiple costs for different jobs on one invoice. So if you're having your subcontractors work on multiple jobs, i.e. The labour only guys, we can put them through as a worksheet, and then that's going to create one invoice in Sage. So on here, I'm going to allocate my subcontractor, and in this case I'm just going to allocate it to a dummy job called timesheets. And the reason why we do that, as I mentioned, is this is when we can allocate and split down the costs for the different job. So on here I can then allocate it to my budget or cost code, date, reference could be an invoice number if they've given you one, and the details could be what or who's done the work. Next, we've got a labour material split for the CIS tax, and then this could be, say, 8 hours at £10 an hour. He's then worked on a different job, same invoice number, and what I will say is F6, F7 and F8 are the same in Construction Manager as they are in Sage. So F6 copies the line above, F7 inserts, and F8 deletes. And then on this one, maybe he's done 3 days at £100 a day. And then finally, he's just randomly bought some materials for that job. So down here we've got a total of £400, and this is split over 3 different jobs or more. We can save the worksheet and then certify it with an invoice. So on here we track the cumulative previous and current amounts. So we've got £400. On this job we've deducted a 3% retention, so it's automatically worked that out. But if you wanted to change that figure, you can do manually. And maybe for this job we've got a limit of £180, so it's capped his retention on this job, and then it's worked it out. We've got our labour material split, our CIS tax, so this subcontractor was getting 20% deducted. We have the VAT and the total due. Date of the invoice, and then we've also got a due date and then maybe a valuation date as well. And then from a Sage accounts point, we've got the materials and labour nominal code. So when we post this to Sage, all we do is we click save. It's then going to post 3 transactions to Sage. So we've got one for the material, one for the labour, and one for the CIS tax. And they've gone to 3 different nominal codes. And we also pick up the transaction number from Sage as well. So that when we look into Sage and I pick up my subcontractor, I could have looked at this in the transaction list, but these ones that we've just done a moment ago, we've got our material, labour and CIS tax on here. So just by processing it in one place, it's in both Construction Manager and in Sage Accounts. We could have printed that off and emailed the subcontractor of payment receipts, but I'll show you the improved emailing that we've got on our constructionmanager.net in a moment. As I mentioned, if we're just dealing with a certificate or just a limited company who's sending in an invoice, we can just deal with this as a certificate. And then all we do is click on New. This then bypasses the worksheet. So all we do is we select the subcontractor, but then in this case, we're allocating the cost to a specific job. So in here, we've got a cumulative previous and current amount, and I can say, well, actually, he's applying for, let's say, £2,000. Day works, variations, and that gives us our subtotal. As mentioned, we've got a 5% retention on this subcontractor, so it's automatically worked out the retention. And then down here, we've got a labour material split, so maybe £1,000 of that was material, so it's automatically worked out the 20% CIS tax for you, the VAT, and the total due. And then as before, we've got the dates, due dates, and nominal codes. And that's then been posted over to Sage. So once we've done the certificates, we can then do the payments. So yet again, very similar to Sage, we just go into payments and new. This then, I think I did that a little bit too quickly. This then brings up our payment screen. As I said, very similar to Sage. You've got your default bank accounts in here. You can allocate your subcontractor. And then here you've got a list of all unpaid invoices, so I'm just going to pay off a couple because I've got quite a few in here. Bear with me. Pay in full. So we've got our payment total, pay date, and then you've got your back check number or backs, and then this will post it over to Sage. So all I do is click save, and that creates the payment receipt in Sage as well. And then in theory, you can go through your payment your bank rec and see what's being paid. So with some of the reporting within Construction Manager, we can deal with and track all the retention. So some of you may not be holding retentions on your subcontractor, but the system will deal with this very quickly. So for example, I can go in all my certificates, click on the reports, and then we've got a built-in retention summary report. Now this is going to be similar to the sales side, where here we just pick up a line by line for each subcontractor and on each job. So here we've got the subcontractor name, the account code and job number, how much retention has been deducted, whether we've released any, so we've got our net amount, and then on here we've got our due date. So this is the completion date on the contract plus the retention period. And you can save that as a PDF and email it off. But these retention reports are best to run sort of monthly, just to see where you stand. So next I'm going to show you the labour timesheets, and for that I'm going to jump straight into our constructionmanager.net. So the reason why I'm showing you this on our .net platform and not the desktop is the functionality is all the same and the process is all the same, but the functionality here is greater in the sense that we can now do this remotely. So because I'm using Google Chrome, but you can use any browser, you can now access this from site if you wanted to. So you could get a site supervisor or site manager to put the timesheets in, but because our timesheets are web-based, we've also made them mobile-friendly. So this here is my smartphone. So this is an Android phone, but it doesn't matter if it's an Apple or any phone like that. Just go onto the website, and on here I've been set up so I can edit my current timesheets. So all I do is click edit. And then on here I can allocate my job, so I'm just going to do this with my finger. I can allocate the job, I can put in any details of what I've done. It's picked up my pay rate, but if I'm doing some overtime or putting in expenses, I can change that. I can also allocate it to a budget as well if I know that. And then on here we can put a start date, so date, and I can select the time, let's say 2 o'clock. And then hours, I can say, well, maybe I'm just doing 4 hours on this job. So that's worked that out. I can then click save, or if I want to allocate more time to a different job, I can just click on the plus icon, click save, and that's that timesheet save. With this functionality, we've also got a timesheet complete button. So at the end of the week, when the employee is finished, he can mark this as complete, and then that appears on the labour timesheet so that the office can see that that employee is finished for the week. So all we do, whether you're on desktop or .NET, is go into labour and timesheets. This was the one that we just did a moment ago. So I can open up that timesheet for the week, and you'll see here, as I mentioned, we've got a username and a time date stamp of when that's been completed. Now, as I mentioned, the office has final say, so if I go, that's 3 hours, I can lock that timesheet, and that means that the employee can't go back in to change it. And as I mentioned earlier, we can then post those to Sage Payroll. But all this functionality is live, and we've got customers using it now. But as I mentioned earlier, our whole platform is looking to be released in September 2019. And as before, as I mentioned, we've also got the subcontractor emailing, even though the invoicing isn't done. So for example, when we're doing our monthly return, we can select our monthly return, and the emailing in here is far superior. So if you've got 20, 30, 100 subcontractors in your monthly return, all you do is you select that month, Control A, click email, and this will then send one email per subcontractor. So it pre-populates with their email address. I've pre-populated a template, so it's picked up the return and the body of the text, and then the layout that we're going to do, and then all we do is click send, and that then sends one email per subcontractor. We can take it a step further for security purposes. So within each subcontractor's record, we can set a password. So instead of sending a PDF, we'll send a web link, and what that will then do is when they click on that link, it will be password protected. So when we go into that subcontractor's record, we can set a password, which what our customers are doing at the moment is just using their UTR number, because the subbies will know that UTR number, and you can set that password, and so that when you click on that link, it will then come up with a password protected. So you've got that extra level of security so that no one sees that information on his emails. So next, I'm going to go into the sales applications. So on here we go into customers. And so if you're using multiple Excel documents to track your applications, retentions, etc., this is going to get rid of all those Excel documents. So on here we can click on application. I'm going to tick all dates just for this example in new, but that's where you could filter by a particular customer or project manager. Click on new to create a new application. Click OK. And then here we're going to generate a new application. So on here, similar to the subcontractors, we track the cumulative, previous and current amounts. So yet again, I can say, well, actually, I'm going to apply for £5,000 plus £2,000 worth of day works, £1,000 worth of variations, and maybe £5,000 worth of materials. So that puts up the cumulative values in here, or vice versa. I can say, well, actually, that's 153, and that then adjusts the current amount. So that gives us our subtotal. This job's been set up with a 5% and 5% retention and 2% discount. So we've got the retention values here. Yet again, we can cap that retention if you've got an agreement with your customer. So maybe now we tap that, limit that at, let's go, and that automatically adjusts how much retention we're dealing. The balance, we can deal with the CIS tax if you're having that deducted. So we've got a labour material element. So yet again, the labour material may be, let's go £5,000. So that works out the CIS tax, the VAT, and the total due. This is then application number 19. We've got the date of the application and the job number, and then we can put a due date in here as well. Or you can just simply have 30 days from date of application. Then we can save and print. Click on view, and then these layouts can be created with your logo, changing the font, formatting, things like that. And they can be tweaked, and we can remove information if necessary. So we've got the company details, company logo, and customer's address, application details, and then underneath we've got the cumulative previous and current amounts with all those values in there. And then we've got on here previous applications not paid. So a gentle reminder that that total application is still outstanding. And then this is not a VAT invoice. So once that application's been raised, it will appear on this list. And what you'll see is that some are in black and some are in blue. The black ones have had applications raised and certified with an invoice. The blue ones haven't. So when you want to create the invoice, either the payment's been received or just before, all we do is click on the application and click certify. This then brings up this screen. So on the right hand side we've got the application details. So these were the values that were on the application. And then if your customer comes back and goes, unfortunately not having any of that, don't agree with that, and I'm only going to pay you half of that. We've then got our subtotal. The retentions can the retention values can appear here. So we've got the retention and the discount, the balance, CIS tax, the VAT, and the total due. We then pick up the next invoice number from Sage. So as soon as we post this over, this will be the invoice number. And then we've got the reference here, which is the order number from the contract. And then all we do is click save. Are you sure you wish to post this over to your accounts? Click yes. And then in this instance, because I've got CIS tax, it's done an invoice and a credit. So we've got the reference numbers, nominal codes, details, and then transaction numbers from Sage. Yet again, we can print these off and send it as a certified invoice to the customer. Yet again, these can all be tweaked and modified with your details. We've got all the details down here and the cumulative previous and current amounts for that job. So once the invoice has been raised, we want to do the payment. So yet again, we go into customers and payment receipts. And this will duplicate the payment both in Construction Manager and Sage. So very similar to Sage, just click on New. We've got our default bank account. We can allocate our customer. So we have a list of all unpaid invoices. These are the ones that we've just did a moment ago. And then all we do is click, I'm going to click Pay in Full and Pay in Full. Payment date, backs or a check, and then this will post the payment receipt over to Sage. All we do is click Save, and that's the payment done in Sage accounts. So with once that process is done, we can look at some of the reporting. So within the applications, if I go Control A to select all, and in reports, we've got a few built-in reports here. So first one is a retention summary report. This does a line-by-line for each job. So as I mentioned, we've got the due date, which is the completion date on the contract plus the retention period. We've got the customer code, job number, job name, and order number, and then how much retention's been certified. So I know that that $7,000 was due back in 2007. And then we got the total for all those that I've highlighted. The next report is an application balance summary. So yet again, this one's line by line. We've got the customer code, the date, job name, order number, and job number. We've then got the contract value, and then we've got the applications, what's been certified, what's been paid, and the total outstanding. And then finally, I just wanted to show you this one last one here, which is a current application balance. We want to untick this and click OK. And basically, this is going to do a line by line for each application. So if you get a customer that overpays, underpays, misses a payment, this is the report you need, and it's going to track everything regarding that sales application process. So this first column is what we've applied for. This is what we've been certified, and this is outstanding. And then on here we've got it by application date. So we've got the application date, the gross amount, any discount, the net retention, the net amount, and what's to be paid, which includes VAT. And that's the same for the certificates and the outstanding. So if you can see, he's missed a payment here, he's missed an invoice here. We can keep a track of that job and see what's total outstanding regarding that job. And then this is, I've highlighted this for all my customers, but if you've got one particular customer where you're doing multiple jobs and things get pushed over from one to the other because they don't tell you what's been paid, you can run this for a particular customer and then sit down with them and go, well, you paid that X amount in that month, but we had to split it against 3 different jobs. And because they didn't tell you what jobs you are, you've done your best guess. So finally, I'm going to go and look at some of the job management. So apart from exporting everything to Excel, we've got some built-in reports. And in fact, before I go on to that, I just want to go back to the applications because there is another method that we can use. So in the applications and new, we can use what's called the schedule. So on here, we can use the schedule and we can base the values currently or cumulatively. So in the schedule, this is where you can itemize what you're applying for. So on here, I've got a first fix. I've applied for 30% so far against my contract claim. Total of £10,000, so I've applied for £3,000 so far. So if I then up this to say 40%, it puts another £1,000 on my application. And below here, you can see if you can add in any variations as the job goes on. I've got it as a percentage, but if you wanted to do it as a bill of quantities and use the quantity and a rate, that's fine. Just for this example, we've got this just because most of our customers, or a lot of our customers, do it this way. But you can build this up. This just needs to be created at the beginning of the job, and that then will be there for previous applications. And then all we do is click Save, Preview. And this is a different style of layout, so it basically replicates what we've got on this screen here. And yet again, this can all be customized, so we've got logos, company names, etc. And then underneath we've got our description, so I've got our first fix electrical, total 40%. And then we've got the details down at the bottom, so total less previous, etc. And then this is not a VAT invoice. So there's the 2 sort of methods that we have for the applications. We've got the standard, and then which a lot of our customers use as a cover note, or we've got this application schedule where you can itemize the breakdown for your customer. And then from that, you would just certify it as you would a standard application. So going back to the job management, I've gone into the jobs. What I'm going to do is just select one job and click into the built-in reports. So as you can see, there are a fair few reports, and I've just highlighted 3 that I'm going to show you. Click on Preview, and this is going to be our activity report. So on here, we've got the customer name, and job number. We've then got the sales, so what we've applied for, what's been invoiced, and what's outstanding, including retention. We've then got our costs, so our materials, PAYE labour, subcontract materials, subby labour, stock, subcontractor timesheets, and the total direct costs. And then we've got gross profit. So, and on here we also track the outstanding orders and committed costs, which the committed is the direct plus your outstanding. And then we also keep a track of subby hours and PAYE hours. And then underneath, I've got my reporting to set up for applications. So the profit here is based on what I've applied for, not invoiced. But there is just a little tick box in our system where you can switch between the two if you wanted to. So underneath here, we've got our applications, our labour, any materials, subcontractor certificates, subby worksheets, and outstanding purchase orders. This job's only gone on to 4 pages, but for larger jobs, that could be 90 or 100 pages. And yet again, you can save this as a PDF or save it as an Excel file. The next one I'm going to show you is this summary by tender. So this is going to do your cost versus budget report. So those tender codes that I set up earlier for the labour, material and plant, I've got my budgets, I can see my costs, and I can see the difference. So that this one's quite long, so I can go onto my second page, see all the budgets and whether I'm overspending or underspending, and then we've got a total down at the bottom. So yet again, we've got our gross application less any discounts, which gives us our what's been invoiced, and then total outstanding, yet again including retention. We've got our contract value, our budget value, and our total costs, and the difference between those two, and then profit to date. And then finally, I'm just going to show you this job progress. So this is one where you can allocate multiple jobs. Generally best to use it on a monthly basis, and you could filter by, like I say, by customer or project manager or QS, and then you can run it for their particular jobs. But on here, we've then got the job number, the name of the job, and the contract value. We've then got the sales. We've then got our costs, so it gives us our total costs at the end, and then our gross profit. So you can see quite quickly here, this is negative. It's because we haven't got an invoice out. And then down at the bottom, this one's spilt over to 2 pages. We've then got a total for everything that we've highlighted. So as I said, that could be for a particular customer or a particular project manager, and see how well that job's performing. So that then if there are any particular worrying jobs like this one here, we can look at that and see, well, first of all, there's no invoices. Let's find out what's going on with that job, and then we can run the activity reports. That's everything I wanted to cover in this webinar. I don't know if there's any questions that anybody would like to answer. I can see there is a couple here. I will stay on, but as I said, that's everything I wanted to go for. If anyone does have any questions that I haven't answered, please just type them in. Otherwise, please contact or email or call us. If I put the details back on. In fact, I'll just leave that screen up unless there's any other questions. I hope you found that enlightening. And by all means, please give us a call or send us an email for any inquiries, but either myself or one of my colleagues will be in touch just to get some feedback.